everyone, and welcome to Helena's Rejection. That's right. Lynx is going to be rejected by someone called Helena. I actually think I don't know a single person with that name. Even though I live in Poland, and in Poland that is a name, but I don't know a single one, which is crazy. Let's go. Why? That's what I kept asking myself when Helena called me here and said that she wanted to discuss the biography. Why? Her assistant already let me know it was all approved. Don't go asleep. And the recent second revision contained only minor changes. So why? And also, the official full payment for the biography has been transferred to my account. I wish that was true. And I've already received my flight tickets home. Is it? She wants to say goodbye? I didn't know. The rain was pouring down this morning. It was still summer, but I felt the temperature dropped significantly. And then I saw her. She's kinda old. She was already waiting for me. I picked up my pace and... Hi, how are you? How you doing? I said, smiling, intending to ask her about why. Actually, why do I keep this? The fan doesn't need to be turned on anymore, really. I'm sorry, Bertrand. Oh my... What a name. Is it a common name? I think it's a French name, to be fair. She said, and an uncomfortable feeling seized me. We have spent a lot of time together, so I knew she liked to skip even the greeting and get right to the heart of the matter that occupied her. What happened? I quickly asked, trying to remain neutral, keeping my smile on me. Fake smile. But I will not go on with the biography. Those words. Why? I don't understand you. You. I don't want to have this published anymore. She said, completing my sentence. No. Why did this? Why? I asked, uttering almost reflexively. It was impossible for her not to anticipate this reaction. And I felt terrible for that. Like I was predictable. And she, being who she is, she knows how people react to rejections. And I'm sure so many of them ask why, as their first response. I felt like I should have come up with something more sophisticated. Like, what's the reason? I'm so stupid. It was embarrassing. It's because... Helena started, but I jumped in, something I don't recall ever doing with her. Was I angry? Wait, but this is the second revision. Why did your assistant tell me earlier? I mean, he must have known that you wouldn't like it. I said, my voice becoming more and more agitated. I have done a good job. I know it. I have made a mistake trusting him with it. I should have read myself, but this is not what I wanted. She said, in that kind of firm voice that I know she uses in board meetings. That voice and those words that have just conveyed to me that she did not read the biography until recently. And that she was genuinely sorry, but with that voice, that meant her decision was final. Immediately I knew there was no point in fighting. I knew her well enough to see there would be no biography. And the most respectful thing I could do was accept her decision. No, I'm sorry, I took a deep breath. I did want to cut you off then and...
No. I am really very sorry. It wasn't a decision I made lightly,
she said, and at a stroke she became the person she always was towards me. Open. Honest. I really believed her when she said that. But this has not been an easy decision for her. So what now? I asked, even though I knew it was jumping over many things which should be talked about before asking the question. It was as if I was in some state of shock. And after initially reacting calmly, it all started to slowly sink in. All that work, it was paid for and all, but... Still, does she want me to rewrite it now? That thought briefly entered my mind, but...
I would ask my assistants to close things up. I don't know how long that will take. It depends on you. If you want to go home or...
Why? I asked almost inaudibly. I felt so weak. I was ashamed of it, but couldn't get over it. My pride was hurt. Oh, so hurt. It shouldn't be because of the face of it. It was simple. She was a client. I did something for her and she didn't like it. She would still pay for it, but wouldn't use it. I see no problem. I was compensated, so... It shouldn't matter to me. I should thank her and... She started saying something, stopping after we have seemingly inadvertently walked towards the center of the open hall that was sheltering us. She must have heard that why that sounded almost like a sigh. That instinctive, automatic question of all those who get rejected. Why? I hated the question. I always have in these situations. And seeing myself ask it when I thought I was certainly better than to ask why I got rejected. I was so angry at myself. And then...
You...
Her voice was breaking as she continued with determination.
Know me.
She said, and the effort she had to put into saying it was palpable. I have never heard her say anything in this tone before. The determination. Her voice filled with anger, disappointment, yet also with understanding, and then... condescension. Was she really that disappointed? Let down by me? Thoughts kept racing through my head, but... Helena. I interjected without even knowing what I would say. Maybe it was merely to break up what she was going to say. As if I knew I would get hurt even more. But...
You know me, Bertrand, and yet...
She continued, ignoring my attempt to slow things down.
You don't really say how terrible I am.
She said and took a deep breath. Now the mixture of disappointment and frustration in her expression was unmistakable. I don't understand. How terrible are you? This was crazy. I did not... Terrible. That did not make any sense to me.
Bertrand, should I explain to you what I meant?
What? Was she insulting me even more now? No, I don't accept this. I got angry at that rhetoric. It was the kind of pretentious. And in that second her expression changed.
I'm sorry, but I don't want to attempt to rewrite either.
She said, as if I was reading the path my mind would take, and skipping several steps. I'm like an open book to her. I was indeed going to argue. I should be allowed to rewrite it. Dude, no, she doesn't want, so why would you?
Dude, calm the hell down.
I would even agree to it for free, back home. She wouldn't need to pay me. At least one more attempt. Because... she paid me more than enough to sustain me for that time I would spend rewriting. What? How much do people writing biographies for other people earn for that? I'm kinda curious now. It wasn't about the money. I briefly thought of pushing back and asking her to let me rewrite it out of fairness. since she didn't read any of the drafts or even the first revision. But even in this state I was now in, I knew that would just make me look small. So I bit my tongue and resisted. I will not bite my tongue here. The truth was, she owed me nothing. Please, tell me, I said, resigned. I don't even know how that happened. As if I spent so much energy trying not to be angry, that I had no strength to be anything more than just a submissive shell of myself. What did it matter that the very second as I was saying those words, I was already regretting them? What did it matter that I knew they were so idiotic? Or that I knew they made me feel so weak in this situation? It didn't matter. I asked them, and attempting to get back some dignity in understanding her situation, and politely wait until she herself explains. It would make things even worse. Because the me that she was dealing with was precisely the type of person who she would react to in that tone in one of her board meetings. I've seen it so many times. She will ask me now, throw the question back at me. How did I not see this coming?
Tell you,
she asked. It made perfect sense. I really didn't specify. I suppose she might have guessed, but it was impolite to have her do that. In fact, I finally understood that she was not being condescending now. She didn't ask me again, pretending not to know, to make me feel even smaller. She was giving me an opportunity. I'm sorry, Interesting noise. I just want to know why you don't want to go with it, I said, trying to be as factual as I could. Because you said you were terrible, I said, taking silent deep breaths.
I am terrible, you must know that,
Helena immediately replied. There was so much conviction in her voice that... why? I asked in complete astonishment. She wasn't terrible. How would one even arrive at this conclusion?
Don't you see it?
No, I don't. What does she want from me? And what does terrible even mean?
You don't exactly, and that's alright, because everyone is like you, and I never really explained to you how terrible I was. So how can I explain to you too?
She stopped. For a brief second she hesitated, but then she continued the sentence. Her words were burning me up already, and I feared.
How can I expect to see how terrible I am?
What are you talking about? She finished, and I was only beginning to realize the scale of that insult. You mean I can't see it? I said, irritated. I think that's why she paused just before. But in the end she decided to risk sounding as if she was better than me. And why? To make a point?
I don't feel I'm better than you,
she said suddenly, as if answering that unspoken allegation. It felt so inconceivable that someone would actually mean it, and yet, maybe for her, I should give it a chance, and be the person that I would think of myself I am. Someone dignified. Are you? Almost in concert, we moved a little towards the other end of the open hall. But it feels that way, I said, changing my tone as she stopped. I really did want to understand.
Yeah,
she said, and I could sense relief in her voice. Yes?
Yeah, it feels that way. But not because I think less of you, but because you are afraid to see the nature of why I am terrible.
What? I almost lost my composure again. Breathe. This is so stupid. I never lose my cool, and we've all... Nah, I highly doubt that, mate. Bertrand, you are lying like now. And we've always had good conversation with Helena. So why is this thing making me so angry?
I'm not trying to patronize you,
she said again, as if reading my mind. It's like in this movie with Mel Gibson, I think. And the way Helena said it, somehow she was helping me find the instinct of immediately getting angry again. Maybe she has that, that ability. But with men, But isn't it cheap? I said, for the first time in this conversation, feeling like I was not merely following her.
Cheap?
She said, not even asking, and made her way to the very end of the open hall, where one could hear and feel the rain. I followed, still thinking about the tone of her voice when she repeated the word cheap. It was as if she was simply confirming to herself something she had predicted I would say. As if she knew it would encourage me to admit to that line of reasoning. That her being a terrible or arrogant rather person was the defining characteristic of how she often appeared in public. And that I was hired to write her biography to show the entirety of her personality. And that she, or her public relations staff, would probably use it to reduce the negativity around her public image. Well, yeah, cheap as in sensationalist. I started to pick up the conversation again. It was true that before I took this job, the only thing I knew of her was were the dismissive remarks that the press liked to report on.
No. I didn't mean that. I would have liked if the biography were to end up being sensationalist.
But wouldn't it be beautiful if I kept dwelling on how you seem to be disrespectful to your board members? I said as an example, having been in several board meetings and seen how she behaves towards her staff. In her biography, such accounts could be construed as first-hand proof of her cold personality.
But I'm not disrespectful to them,
she said with calm, convinced voice. And yet, that overwhelming confidence communicated exactly the type of attitude I was trying to hint at. I knew she had it in her, of course. These meetings were by far not the only thing that came through in. And yet, I've never seen her direct that condescension towards me. Well, but you kind of are disrespectful, I said in an insistent tone, sensing I could speak openly.
I agree, but we were going to say?
She responded immediately, in a typical way for her, where she did not want to leave her stance open to interpretation. I pretended to ignore it and continued. Yes, well, I'm not the kind of person who would flat out say you're disrespectful.
That's good because I'm not,
she said with a smile, but this time it was almost playful.
I'm sorry.
She immediately stopped herself. Somehow, that gesture. Was I really right in assuming? I'm just trying to see if, from your point of view, you have your reasons to act like that, like, you know, right?
Yeah, I guess I do, but...
She paused, letting me continue. And I tried to find those reasons so that people can better understand. I explained, even though I felt it was unnecessary. It was common sense, I felt like. Surely she didn't want me to portray her in just one light.
I appreciate what you did, Bertrand,
she said, suddenly changing the pace of the conversation.
Thank you.
So, is it my style then? I realized the topic wasn't closed yet.
It's not the style, it's that I feel like you were afraid,
she said flatly. And yet there was a warmth to her response that I now started to feel. Could it be I was missing something all this time? I couldn't be that warmth that was always there when she dealt with people. Afraid? Of what? I asked, letting the conversation go where I assumed Helena wanted to go.
Writing the truth about me.
She continued in a tone that realized she was going back to talking about the boardroom example.
I don't think I wasn't true to myself there. I really do feel that way. You really feel that being so dismissive of them?
She meant the board members, yeah.
Had its reasons other than just me thinking I was better than them. Those reasons you mentioned.
She meant the segments in the biography where I, on occasion, will empathize with her. Yeah, I believe it's your personality, and you said before that you didn't feel like you were better than them. Me. Me and them. It was logical to me. It was mildly irritating for me to not fully understand how she could have gotten the impression that I was afraid.
Yeah, but I still think you're afraid to see me for who I am.
She said firmly, and timidly I was trying to resist the urge to ask her the obvious question. Who she believes she is. And for I really wanted to, I didn't ask. It was a good feeling, to feel like I had my composure back. So I stood there in silence.
You know, I can feel it from how you write.
She continued, seeing that I was not responding.
I can even sense how you avoided that hypothesis.
Helena said, and in an instant everything changed. No, it couldn't be. It was in that moment that I started to doubt myself. Have I written
the entire 500 pages based on a mistaken premise?
A terrible person. That's what she described herself as. And what if?
What if she was right? What if she never wanted me to explain anything or to defend her?
What if what she calls her was the true her? I knew she would never call me a coward, but indeed those words made me feel fear. I uttered in a resigned way, trying to grasp the full meaning of the word in that context.
You don't agree?
Helena looked at me. It was awful. Her words and how she said them conveyed that one disdain, but at the same time her eyes. I looked at her and... Helena. I said her name as if through some strange short circuit in my brain that had just occurred. I just couldn't answer her. This time, it was I who felt the need to physically move. I breathed in... What the fuck was that? I breathed in deeply as I turned around and looked towards the red staircase that was the entrance to the museum. Helena. Her mind games today. The way she has never stated what she meant and always tried to nudge me in some direction she wanted me to go in this conversation. It had long already started to aggravate me. But they were no mind games. Not to the mind of someone who has no feelings towards me, as someone who represented the collective people in her life. She was terrible, but only because that's the only word that would permit to describe her.
Do you ever think about my future?
She asked, catching me completely off guard. What do you mean?
My future, Bertrand. Have you not wondered? For your biography?
She said, hinting at... I'm sorry? It was clear as the day now. No, I didn't see anything in light of that.
It's alright,
she said in a way that only seemed to strengthen her resolve in whatever she had planned after the biography project would be discarded. I wanted to apologize for failing her, but an apology from someone like me would be worthless.
It's not a failure, Bertrand,
she suddenly said. She meant the biography. Well, it kind of was. I smiled as one would in an informal conversation to lighten the mood with a little self-depreciation. Except I didn't feel like being self-depreciating. It was an honest expression of what I felt.
It's not.
Helena insisted.
It's not your fault, it's me,
she said without even blinking how this overused phrase may sound. In fact, I have never heard it be more true and honest than right now. As if our entire conversation was merely to be able to say this and have it be understood in its most profound meaning. So, the environment... I suddenly started coughing as my throat seemed to dry out. Excuse me, the environment... I'm good. I was trying to hint at the accusations that have been made of poor environmental awareness of her companies.
I don't.
She answered the question I was attempting to finish formulating. And it was in this very moment that I finally understood why all this time she has been leading me away from attempting to understand her by empathizing. Because I couldn't. I could only draw a conclusion logically. It's someone who feels like this about the future. But they, by necessity, need to feel like this about people too. And that time inroads. I hinted at one interview session with her in her hometown about children. It came to a very upsetting end, and I never quite... Yeah, Helena replied, and the manner in which she affirmed was devoid of any emotion. And yet, to my shock, I felt relief? Warmth? A stillness, a calming sense of peace radiating from her. I felt her indifference. Pure, honest, true. And for the first time I saw her eyes be as deep as the eyes of someone who is truly happy. A person who has let go. I understand. I said simply, there was nothing to add. Thank you. Helena said, even though it was not clear to me why she was thanking me. Thank me?
Yeah, thank you. At least for...
I sensed how she was trying to find words, as not to require me to walk any further with her in those thoughts. Going this far?
Huh,
I said, and Helena smiled.
I suppose so.
When said as plainly as this, it all felt surreal, silly even. I began to wonder whether she even ever intended to have the biography published. Because with that last utterance, she has all but admitted to have merely been using me as a catalyst for her future. And yet, it was alright. It really was. Even this conversation that was almost like an argument at the beginning, and that felt like its true purpose was that Helena was leading me to a realization later on. In the end, it doesn't matter how it has affected me or not. There was the true realization. And whether I was good enough of a writer to refrain the biography to show Helena's most intimate feelings, or whether I would concede that indeed I was too afraid to destroy my relationship with society if I ventured too deep into her world. This biography would never be the reason for me being here. I was here to be the rejection. I was all of them to her. And yet, in my default way of thinking, I recall the times past and whatever situations remembered, I felt like I could say no ill her to anyone else. Helena was always kind, understanding, and accommodating. And now that I knew our ways would part forever, the only thing I regretted was how I got upset when we met today. Even if I knew there was no other way. And that she would certainly not ever hold it against me. Are you really like this? I asked what would be the last question I would ever truly ask her. It was clumsily formulated, and I was embarrassed at how redundant it felt, but I knew it didn't matter anymore. I hoped she understood what I meant to ask.
I am,
she said and looked at me. And then,
I'm sorry, Bertrand,
Helena said out of the blue. It's alright. I'm even more sorry, I said, hoping she would recognize as me apologizing for raising my voice today, on occasion.
No, really, I'm sorry. I just needed to be with someone like you now,
she said with complete honesty in her voice. In an immediate flashback, I attempt to read into the circumstances of how we met 2 years ago, and how the whole idea of the biography was set up, but it was still impossible for me to grasp what she was saying, or implying I felt like in that moment, and it was a nice time. I said without thinking. It was the first thing that came to my mind, and I felt like my face was immediately flushed. I felt heat rushing to my head as a sense of pure and devastating guilt has overcome me that very second. It was the end. Helena took a deep breath and looked at me as if to say it was alright, and I accepted, in silence, for the first time feeling like her friend.
So, this is a goodbye?
She said. I nodded slightly as to acknowledge what she was saying, but that it didn't need to be goodbye if she didn't want it to be. That if she ever needed.
Thank you, Bertrand,
she said in soft voice, breaking my train of thoughts. She then bowed very slightly to signal that we would now part. I attempted to finish my thought, but my mind was blank. In that moment, the only thing I came up with was how that bowing may be something she picked up here, in Japan. Goodbye, Helena. I said because there was nothing else to say. She smiled and nodded in the same way that I have nodded a few seconds before.
Goodbye.
Helena Kastakitis mysteriously disappeared in winter that year. No letter and no explanation was found.
What?
A year later, I have finished my first novel. I worked on it for 7 months, even though I knew I would never publish it. Because whether through a biography or through a fictional character, ultimately, Helena did not deem others worthy of knowing who she was. And it was not my place to do that on her behalf. The end. Or is it? A visual novel by Mikey, as expected. Helena's Rejection. Character by Chozogal. Music by Sleepy Agents. That's used to the audio library. Photography written and directed by Mikey. ATP Projects Production. Yeah, we know. Sunofest 2016. Is there anything else, or are we done? We are done. Okay, yeah, that was Helena's Rejection. Hope you somehow enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next game. Have a wonderful day or night. Bye bye.